Welcome to the debate. When we step outside on a clear night and look up at the vastness of the cosmos, we are inevitably hit by, well, the ultimate metaphysical inquiry.
Yeah, the big one.
Exactly. Why is there something rather than nothing? I mean, are the physical laws governing those billions of stars pointing to a grand, transcendent architect? Or, are they the result of a colossal, indifferent cosmic accident?
Right.
So today, we are exploring the single most profound question humanity has ever asked. Does God exist?
And, this is a question that requires us to sift through literally centuries of brilliant source material.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at a lineage of thought that stretches from the ancient cosmology of Aristotle and the medieval scholasticism of Thomas Aquinas.
Right, straight through to the Enlightenment.
Exactly. The critiques of David Hume and Immanuel Kant, and then directly into the modern biological and physical realities uncovered by Charles Darwin and quantum mechanics. It is a massive scope.
It really is, and we are approaching this from two fundamentally opposing paradigms today. I'm arguing from the classical theistic position. Basically, when we look at the origins of the universe, the unyielding physical laws, and the highly ordered nature of reality, these factors rationally necessitate the existence of a transcendent, intelligent creator, a necessary first cause and designer.
And I am taking the skeptical, naturalistic view here. I argue that the universe operates on blind mechanical forces.
Right.
When you look at the devastating philosophical critiques of the past 300 years, combined with, the brutal empirical reality of suffering in the natural world, the concept of a divine architect becomes logically unnecessary, and I would argue heavily flawed.
Well, let's get right into it then. The foundation of the theistic argument doesn't actually start with morality or even biology.
Okay.
It starts with existence itself. This is the cosmological argument, most famously codified by Aquinas in his First Way. Look around us, right? Everything we observe in the universe exists contingently.
Meaning dependent on something else.
Exactly. Things are subject to change, decay, entropy. They don't just have to exist, their existence depends on something else. Like a tree depends on soil and water.
Sure.
And those depend on planetary formation, which depends on stellar life cycles. Now, science is magnificent at mapping causes within the universe. But logically, you can't have an infinite regress of physical causes.
You can't just have an endless chain of dependent events stretching back forever. Because if there's no beginning to the chain, there's no reason for the chain to exist at all. There must be a starting point.
There must be an uncaused first cause, what philosophers call a causa sui, a cause of itself that exists entirely outside of space and time to initiate the sequence.
Yeah, the logic there sounds airtight on the surface. I'll give you that. But it really breaks down when you apply the critiques of the Enlightenment.
How so?
Well, thinkers like David Hume and Immanuel Kant demonstrated a massive overreach in that exact argument. Cause and effect is a framework we derive purely from our daily experience inside the world.
Okay.
I hit a billiard ball, it hits another ball, cause, effect. We have absolutely zero empirical or logical justification to take that local physical framework and just, project it outside of the universe to explain the origin of reality itself.
But see, modern cosmology actually reinforces the intuition that the universe needs a cause. We aren't just doing abstract armchair philosophy here.
Aren't we?
No. The Big Bang Theory and the observable entropy of matter strongly imply the universe had a definitive starting line. It is expanding and it is cooling. If the universe began to exist, it is not eternal.
Right.
And if it is not eternal, it requires a cause that transcends its own physical boundaries, something timeless, immaterial, and vastly powerful.
Even if I grant that the universe had a definitive beginning, which, physics still debates, jumping to a timeless, immaterial mind as the cause is an enormous leap.
Is it?
Oh, absolutely. Hume asked a devastating question in his dialogues concerning natural religion. He basically said, if you insist that absolutely everything needs a cause, what caused God?
But...
And if your answer is, well, God is the exception, God is the uncaused first cause, then you've just admitted that uncaused things can exist. So why are we inventing an invisible deity to be the uncaused thing?
Right, well,
Why assume the universe itself, or, the quantum foam from which it emerged, isn't the ultimate stopping point of explanation?
I'll tell you why. Because of the nature of the entity we are discussing. The rule isn't everything has a cause.
Okay.
The rule is everything that begins to exist has a cause. The physical universe began to exist, therefore it needs a cause. God, by definition, is eternal and uncaused.
That feels like playing with definitions, though.
Not at all. To answer your question of why the universe can't just be a brute fact, let's look at Occam's razor. We are supposed to seek the most elegant explanation without unnecessarily multiplying entities, right?
Sure, simplicity.
Exactly. If you find a deeply complex, functioning clock, you don't assume an infinite regress of physical gears somehow creating other gears for eternity.
Right.
Nor do you assume this highly complex physical object just always existed for no reason. Positing a single, conceptually simple, necessary being, a mind, is a far more elegant stopping point than accepting an infinitely complex, uncaused physical universe as just some gigantic accident.
Wait, we need to pause on the idea of simplicity here. You are arguing that God is the simple explanation.
I am.
Kant also tore into the ontological underpinnings of this. He pointed out that you cannot logic a perfect being into existence. He famously stated that existence is not a predicate.
Let's make sure we clarify that for the listener. By predicate, Kant meant a property or a characteristic.
Exactly. So if I describe a triangle, I say it has 3 sides and 3 angles. Those are predicates. They add information to the concept.
Right.
If I add, and this triangle exists, I haven't changed the definition of the triangle. Kant's point is, you can't just define a conceptually perfect first cause in your mind and say, well, a perfect being must possess the property of existence, therefore God is real.
But that's a slight mischaracterization of...
You are positing an omniscient, omnipotent mind that exists outside of time and space. That is not an elegant, simple solution. That is the ultimate multiplication of entities.
I disagree.
You are trying to solve the mystery of the cosmos by introducing an even greater, utterly impenetrable mystery. We know universes exist. We are standing in one. Positing that the physical cosmos, however it started, is all there is, requires significantly fewer leaps of faith than inventing a supernatural dimension to hold it.
Well, a mind doesn't have to be physically complex in the way a galaxy is. In its essence, consciousness or unified will can be quite simple. But look, I hear your resistance to the cosmological argument.
Yeah, I'm not buying it.
Fair enough. So, if we disagree on the metaphysical origins, on exactly why the universe is here, let us shift our focus to how the universe operates, because this is where the classical theistic view gains immense empirical traction.
You're talking about the teleological argument?
Yes, the argument from design.
All right, let's look at the how, because I would argue this is where the theistic argument takes its most devastating hit.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. For centuries, the strongest argument for God was biology. People looked at the human eye or the wing of a bird and said, look at this staggering complexity. It's perfectly fitted to its environment. It must have been engineered.
Right. Paley's watchmaker.
Exactly. But Darwinian evolution destroyed that illusion.
Destroyed is a very strong word.
I use it intentionally. We now understand the mechanism of complexity. We know that biological structures are absolutely not the result of top-down design.
Well,
take that human eye. It didn't start as a blueprint. It started as a single light-sensitive cell. A random genetic mutation creates a slight physical depression in a creature, giving it a tiny advantage in detecting shadows and evading predators.
Sure.
Over millions of generations, that depression deepens into a cup, then a pinhole, and eventually a lens forms. It is a bottom-up accumulation of random genetic mutations sorted by deep time. It is a mechanical, blind process. No grand architect is required.
I actually concede the mechanism of evolution. Theistic philosophy doesn't need to reject Charles Darwin. The process of natural selection is brilliant.
Okay, so you agree it's blind.
But let's look at the philosopher Richard Swinburne's pivot on this exact issue. Natural selection explains the survival of the fit, but it utterly fails to explain the arrival of the fit.
What do you mean?
Evolution is not a free-floating magic trick. It only works because it is underpinned by the continued, highly regular operation of the laws of biochemistry and physics.
Meaning the environment allows it?
Meaning the fundamental laws of the universe allow it. Why do atoms bond in the precise, stable ways necessary to form DNA? Why does gravity operate consistently with an inverse square law everywhere in the observable universe?
Well, they're physical constants.
Right. But the sheer fact that the universe operates on predictable, rational, mathematically elegant laws, rather than being a chaotic, formless soup, is exactly what points to a rational lawgiver. We live in a deeply biophilic or life-permitting universe. The fine-tuning of the cosmos is staggering. If the gravitational constant were altered by just a fraction of a percent, stars would never ignite or they would collapse immediately into black holes.
Okay, but
If the strong nuclear force were slightly different, atoms couldn't hold together. The unity and mathematical elegance of quantum mechanics and relativity point directly to a unified, intelligent source.
we need to pull back to David Hume's critique of this exact analogy. You are looking at the universe and marveling at how perfectly suited it is for us.
Because it is.
But Hume points out that we have a sample size of exactly one universe. We have zero experience of other universes being built. To claim our universe is brilliantly designed implies we have seen undesigned universes to compare it against.
Well, we can model them mathematically.
But we have no idea if the fundamental constants of physics could possibly be any different than they actually are in reality. Maybe this is literally the only way matter can stabilize.
But mathematically, the parameters could absolutely be different. The precision isn't necessary, it's astonishingly lucky. Unless it's intended.
Even if I grant you that this order implies some sort of designer, Hume asks another fantastic question. How do you leap from a cosmic fine-tuner to the classical all-loving God?
I mean, the order implies intellect.
If order proves a designer, why not a committee of designers? Or, more appropriately, when you actually look closely at nature, why not an incompetent apprentice deity who botched the job and left behind a deeply flawed, painful world?
Hume's apprentice deity is a clever rhetorical device, I'll grant you. But it falls terribly short when you look at the scale of the cosmic order. A bumbling apprentice doesn't map onto the profound mathematical elegance of the cosmos. The unity of the laws points to a singular unified mind.
You call it mathematically elegant. You are looking at the stars. I am looking at the biological reality happening on the ground.
Right.
And this leads directly to the most significant challenge to theism and what Hume was gesturing at with his flawed world concept, the problem of evil.
Yes.
This is the breaking point for the idea of a benevolent designer.
I agree. This is the single most profound challenge to classical theism.
We talked about evolution as a mechanism earlier. Let's look at what that mechanism actually requires. Evolution is driven by starvation, parasitism, predation, and mass extinction. It is a system built entirely on suffering. Think of Darwin's famous horror at the ichneumon wasp, which paralyzes a caterpillar and lays its eggs inside so the larvae can eat the host alive from the inside out.
It's gruesome.
It is. Why would an all-powerful, all-loving God construct a world that fundamentally relies on such thoroughly nasty mechanisms? If God is omnipotent, he could have chosen any mechanism to create life.
Well,
Look at Epicurus' ancient riddle. If God is willing to prevent evil but not able, then he is not omnipotent. If he is able but not willing, he is malevolent.
I don't want to diminish the heavy emotional and philosophical weight of this point. It is the hardest question theology faces, and, any honest theist has to grapple with it.
Yeah.
But let me introduce the Irenaean theodicy, particularly as it was developed by the modern philosopher John Hick. Hick argues that the world was never intended to be a hedonistic paradise where nothing goes wrong. He calls the world a vale of soul-making.
Soul-making, meaning it's a testing ground?
It's an environment designed for growth, for human beings to possess genuine free will, and for us to develop authentic moral character. God must maintain an epistemic distance.
Epistemic distance, meaning God intentionally hides himself from us?
Meaning God does not make his existence overwhelmingly, coercively obvious. Nor does he intervene to stop every pain. Let me offer an analogy to ground this.
Okay.
think of a dedicated teacher who has spent weeks preparing her students for a crucial final exam. When the time for the test comes,
the teacher must step out of the room or at least remain completely silent.
Right.
If she stands over their shoulders, feeding them the answers the moment they struggle, the students learn nothing. Their achievements aren't real. Similarly, God must allow a physical world with real risks, inflexible natural laws, and real consequences. If God intervened and suspended gravity every time a child fell out of a tree, we wouldn't live in a moral universe. We would live in a padded cell. The harshness of the physical world provides the exact friction required for courage, compassion, and authentic love to occur. Without danger, there is no bravery. Without suffering, there is no empathy.
I understand the logic of the teacher analogy, but it fails catastrophically on the scale of proportionality.
How so?
A teacher giving a difficult exam is one thing. A teacher locking her student in a room with a starving lion is something else entirely. Does the sheer, staggering volume of suffering justify this epistemic distance?
I think it's the only way a physical universe can operate if free will is the ultimate goal.
But your focus is entirely anthropocentric. You're talking about human free will and human courage. What about the millions of years of animal suffering, terror, and agonizing deaths from disease and predation that occurred long before human beings ever evolved?
Well, animal suffering...
What moral character was a triceratops developing when it died slowly of bone cancer? The suffering in the natural world is vastly, infinitely disproportionate to the goal of human moral development. It looks exactly like what you would expect from blind, unfeeling natural forces. It does not look like the syllabus of a loving teacher.
That is a formidable challenge. The suffering of the pre-human world is a deep mystery that requires intellectual humility.
Right.
However, if the ultimate reality is an eternal, infinite God, then our perspective on time and suffering is inherently limited. The Irenaean view suggests that finite suffering, even millions of years of it in the animal kingdom, is ultimately reconciled and given meaning in the context of an infinite, eternal good.
That's a massive leap of faith.
Furthermore, those physical laws you mentioned, the ones that cause bone cancer or tectonic earthquakes, cannot be suspended arbitrarily. A predictable world governed by fixed natural laws is the absolute prerequisite for conscious agents to emerge, make choices, and interact.
But a predictable world is exactly what the naturalistic framework explains without needing to invent an agonizingly complex theological justification for bone cancer and earthquakes.
I wouldn't call it inventing.
The naturalistic view doesn't have to tie itself in knots, trying to explain why an all-loving God created parasites that eat the eyes of children. The naturalistic view offers a much cleaner, albeit colder explanation. The universe is not a moral agent. It just does not care.
Right, but
We humans are the only moral agents here, and the fact that we have evolved to possess empathy and reason, to actually care about the suffering of that child or that animal, is a testament to the remarkable, though completely accidental, outcome of our social biology.
But listen to the language you are using. You are using profound moral outrage to judge the mechanics of the universe.
Yeah, human moral outrage.
Well, where does that moral standard come from? If we are truly just random collections of atoms produced by blind, unguided forces, then our outrage at suffering is just a chemical illusion in our brains. It's just primates reacting to stimuli.
Well,
But we don't experience it that way. The very fact that we recognize evil as definitively evil, the fact that we demand justice, points to a transcendent moral law. As C.S. Lewis famously argued, you can't complain that a line is crooked unless you have some idea of a straight line. The problem of evil is a massive problem, yes, but the very existence of objective moral categories points right back to a moral lawgiver.
that assumes morality can only be anchored in the supernatural. As a skeptic, I argue that morality is entirely explicable through evolutionary biology and social contract theory.
Explain that.
We are a social mammalian species. Empathy, cooperation, and a sense of fairness are highly advantageous traits for the survival of the group. If we run around killing and stealing from each other, our tribe dies out.
Survival isn't the same as objective morality, though.
We don't need a transcendent cosmic straight line dictated by a deity. We just need the evolved, shared consensus of human well-being. We assign the meaning to our lives, and we assign the moral weight to our actions.
Well, as we draw this dialogue to a close, let me summarize where the classical theistic view ultimately lands.
Science has done a breathtaking job of mapping the mechanics of the universe, but mechanics alone cannot answer why the machine is running in the first place.
Right.
Why is there something rather than nothing? The profound, rational order of the cosmos, the elegant fine-tuning of physical laws that allow life to flourish, and our very capacity to apprehend objective truth and moral value, all of these point powerfully toward a transcendent mind. The cosmos is not a closed, accidental system. It is a created reality that bears the undeniable fingerprints of a necessary first cause.
And to summarize my perspective, the rigorous philosophical critiques of Kant and Hume, coupled with the staggering biological revelations of Darwin, have successfully dismantled those classical proofs. When we look honestly at the universe, with its blind evolutionary processes, its vast stretches of empty, lethal space, and the sheer, disproportionate magnitude of animal and human suffering, it is far better understood through naturalistic frameworks. We don't need to appeal to a divine architect to explain the cosmos. Natural laws and deep time are entirely sufficient to explain both the beauty and the horror of reality.
Despite our deep foundational disagreements on the mechanics and meaning of reality, I think there is a profound point of convergence for both of us here.
Definitely.
Both of us acknowledge the overwhelming complexity of the cosmos, whether we are looking at the molecular machinery of a biological cell or the spiraling arms of a distant galaxy. Studying the universe evokes a deep, almost spiritual wonder.
I fully agree with that. The awe is completely real. We share a genuine sense of wonder at the sheer majesty of the cosmos, even if we fundamentally fiercely disagree on the source of that wonder.
And I think that underscores the immense value of looking at these ultimate questions through multiple lenses, through both scientific naturalism and philosophical theology. Examining these opposing perspectives forces us to confront our deepest assumptions and, prevents us from falling into intellectual complacency.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, the source material we've debated today, from Thomas Aquinas and David Hume to modern cosmologists and evolutionary biologists, contains incredibly rich depth on this question.
Oh, definitely.
We've only scratched the surface. There is so much more to explore in these texts to help you refine your own understanding.
We leave this debate without declaring a winner. It is entirely up to you to weigh the evidence, analyze the arguments, and draw your own conclusions. But as you do, remember the imagery we discussed today. When you walk out tonight and look up at the vastness of the night sky, ask yourself, are you looking at the cold, unyielding product of blind natural forces, or are you looking at the highest arches of an intentional cosmic cathedral?